हैंडसेट्स, 70 करोड़ के आसपास ये चलायमान दूरभाष यंत्र है भारतवर्ष में। और इस 70 करोड़ चलायमान दूरभाष यंत्र में करीब 20 या 25 करोड़ यंत्र बहुत चालाक है, स्मार्टफोन्स। They are very, very smart. Sometimes they are smarter than you and I. They'll spell out words for you. They'll misspell words for you. They enable you to communicate with somebody. But you know, we live in a strange world. We don't know our neighbor, but we are able to communicate with somebody who's 10,000 miles away instantaneously. This is the new age of the internet. This is the age of the internet where pornography is available at the click of a mouse, but this same internet is what you hold in your hand, is your newspaper, your magazine, your library, your books, your radio station, your television station, and more. That's what technology it gives you. The same technology that can empower you, and this same technology can divide you. This same technology can widen and sharpen the inequalities between the rich and the poor. This is the same technology. यही जो सूचना प्रयुक्ति का युग में हम लोग हैं आज, ये लोगों को सशक्तिकरण भी कर देते हैं, लोगों को शक्ति मिल जाता है, लोकतंत्र को मजबूत कर देते हैं, और ऐसे भी चीज़ है लोग के अंदर विभाजन करते हैं। भारतवर्ष का जो विविधता है, एक दे वांट टू होमोजेनाइज वन ऑफ द मोस्ट डाइवर्स नेशन स्टेट्स इन द वर्ल्ड। लेट्स कम बैक टू स्पेक्ट्रम। कुछ साल पहले हमारा एक मंत्री जी थे, उनका नाम था राजा, अंडीमुथु राजा। He was a member of the DMK, the Dravida Munnetra Kazhagam. He was the minister, Union Minister for Communications and Information Technology. उन्होंने बोला ये जो spectrum है, you know, these are bands which have to be allotted by the government. This is a scarce resource. ये बहुत महंगा है, बहुत कीमती है, and it's also a finite resource. It's not that, you know, unlike say coal or iron ore, it's a renewable resource, but it's finite. So within that spectrum band, you are allowed, a particular company is given the right to use that spectrum so that you can communicate with each other. So what did Raja say? How should this spectrum be allotted? He said, first come, first served. कितना अद्भुत है देखिए, आप स्पेक्ट्रम जो एक प्राकृतिक संसाधन है, आप एक सिनेमा टिकट की तरह बेच रहे हैं कि आप लाइन में खड़ा हो जाइए, आप देखना चाहिए शाहरुख खान फर्स्ट डे फर्स्ट शो, डिप्स एंड बिप्स एंड पिगी चॉप्स का पिक्चर्स आप देखने चाहते हैं तो आप लाइन में खड़े हैं, बहुत बढ़िया। आप समझ रहे हैं कि मेरा अभी मौका मिल गया, अभी नाउ आई एम कमिंग टू द बॉक्स ऑफिस, इट्स माय टर्न टू गेट द टिकट। अचानक पीछे से एक गुंडा आके आपको लाइन से बाहर निकाल दिया, बोले नहीं आपके पीछे जो बंदा खड़ा है उसको पहले टिकट खरीदने का मौका मिलेगा। Even this first come, first served system, flawed as it was misutilized. The cut-off dates were changed. The terms and conditions of getting the licenses were changed. And then what happened? People were shouting and screaming, and some people looked the other way. हमारे देश में बहुत ऐसे राजनेता हैं ना, जो गांधी जी का 3 बंदर है ना, बुरा मत सुनो, बुरा मत देखो, बुरा मत कहो, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. लोग कहते हैं ये this is a scam, this is a scandal. We said no. Then you have a constitutional authority called the CAG, the Controller and Auditor General of India. He comes out with a report which says that 1,72,000 crores is the notional loss to the country, to the people of this country, to the exchequer. And suddenly you start screaming and shouting, hey, it's not just the biggest scandal in India, it's the biggest scandal in the world. It's not even small change by American standards, it's $30 billion US. And people say, no, he's actually spoiling the image of the nation. कौन आएगा विदेश से यहाँ पे निवेश करने के लिए, देश का छवि नष्ट कर दिया इन्होंने, भारतवर्ष का मानहानि हो गया। अरे बाप रे बाप, विनोद राय को बहुत बात सुनना पड़ा। But Mr. Raja had to leave his job, and after some time Mr. Raja found himself behind bars, and then the Supreme Court intervened and cancelled 122 licenses, and then said what's going to happen to the economy will be disrupted. But that's exactly what happened. You chose to allot resources that belong to the people of the country in a flawed manner. You didn't have a public auction. अगर आप सबके सामने एक नीलाम कीजिए तो ये सारे आरोप लगाने का कोई किसी को भ्रष्ट नहीं कहेंगे. आपने नहीं किया, आपने गलत रास्ता में चला, और जब आप पकड़ गए बोला नहीं हमने तो कुछ गलती नहीं किया, फिर आपको जेल जाना पड़ा, फिर बोला ऐसा होना नहीं चाहिए, फिर अदालत को इंटरवीन करके यू हैड टू कैंसिल ऑल दीज लाइसेंसेस. Then you said, no, if you didn't give spectrum at such a cheap price, how would all of you get mobile phones? That's only one part of the story. Today you're seeing the cost will go up. Your data plans are all there. So you make a mistake and then you try and justify it. But the story doesn't end here. Take the case of coal. Coal, black gold. It's a natural resource. All the electricity, more than half of the electricity that's produced in this country is produced using coal. You may say it's highly polluting, it's contributing to climate change, क्योंकि जलवायु परिवर्तन के युग में भी हम लोग हैं. But we are still dependent on coal. Even today, the public sector, Coal India Limited, produces over 80% of the total coal that's mined in India. But then the government, over the last 20 years, not one government, but successive governments, said we must allow the private sector. ये आर्थिक उदारीकरण का नीति है, हम खुली बाजार में विश्वास करते हैं. This is the age of economic liberalization, of free market economies, and so the private sector should be allowed to mine coal. How was it? So how was this coal allotted? Behind closed doors, there was a group of people who would sit, a committee. हाँ बोला भाई इसका भाई को दे दो, इसका भतीजा को दे दो, इसका बीबी का कोई रिश्तेदार को दे दो, फलाना बन गया डायरेक्टर साहब. This is exactly what happened. A number of companies who got these coal blocks had some connection on the other with powerful politicians and their family members, and that's how you again saw a system which was completely subverted. You didn't have public auctions. You didn't have an open and a transparent system of allotting these these resources. तो आप पारदर्शिता में विश्वास नहीं करते हैं तो लोग भ्रष्ट कहेंगे आपको. आप पर्दे के पीछे कौन मिलेगा नहीं मिलेगा यही करते हैं. What happened at the end of the day? Look at the consequences of what happened. The highest court of the land, the Supreme Court of India, described India's most influential, its premier investigating agency, police investigating agency, the CBI, the Central Bureau of Investigation, was affectionately, very affectionately described by the Supreme Court of India as a caged parrot, pinjre mein tota. It's all public domain. What happened? The law minister had to put in his papers. Why? They're saying you, as the law minister, you as the government of India, you are trying to interfere in the investigations. The very people who are being investigated, you are interfering in that. What happened after that? The director of the CBI, he resigned. He completed his term with a big cloud hanging over it. The case is still going on. He had to quit in ignominy. This is what you are doing to institutions. This is not individuals. Mr. Ashwini Kumar is irrelevant because he was law minister. Mr. Ranjit Sinha is irrelevant, but he was the director of the CBI. So you call this Colgate, huh? Like it, nice one. After Watergate, Colgate for your sensitive teeth. Colgate, brush your teeth with Colgate. Gate, क्योंकि Watergate happened in the US. Watergate was a scandal where Richard Nixon had to put in his papers because two journalists, Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, they exposed how the then Democratic Party had actually burgled the headquarters. The Republican Party's nominees or representatives had burgled the office of the Democratic Party to steal their election strategy or data pertaining to the election strategy. This is well known. The first time the most powerful man on this planet had to put in his papers because of the investigations of two journalists. So everything becomes gate. So we have Snoop Gate, and you have Coal Gate, and you have so many kinds of gates. So you make one mistake, you repeat that mistake. Once again, the Supreme Court has to intervene. Once again, the Supreme Court has to cancel allotments that are made over a 20-25 year period. And then you say, my God, what's going to happen to the economy? Yes, the economy is in a mess. The economy is perhaps in a bigger mess now. बहुत समय लगेगा अच्छे दिन आने के लिए, but कोई बात नहीं, आएंगे एक ना एक दिन. हम तो आशावादी हैं, हम सब लोग. So, but the short point is, these coal block allotments had to be cancelled. Example number 3. This is a subject on which I made a documentary film, and a few copies of the DVD are available if any of you are interested. This is happened in Bellary. It's a small district in Karnataka, and there's an adjoining district in Andhra Pradesh, now Telangana, called Anantapur. This is very rich in iron ore resources. And we had a couple of individuals who were both, it's an amazing story about how within the same individual you saw the convergence of crime, business and politics. एक ही व्यक्ति राजनेता है, एक ही व्यक्ति उद्योगपति है, वही एक ही व्यक्ति अपराधी भी है, और तीनों के बीच ये जो गठबंधन, वे देश की संपत्ति लूट गया. What did they do? There was a spike in the demand for iron ore because there was the Beijing Olympics that took place in 2008. And suddenly there was a spurt in the demand for iron ore, and huge amounts of iron ore were extracted from these two districts and exported to China. It was done in an ecologically devastating manner. वहाँ का जो इलाका है, जो परिवेश है, एकदम खत्म कर दिया. The agriculture was destroyed, livelihoods were destroyed, water supplies were polluted, and the people who were the kingpins, they were people in positions of power and authority. Who gained? Who gained from the loot? Who gained from the loot of resources that not only belong to you and me, but future generations? This iron ore is used to make steel. This steel is not going to rot like tomatoes day after tomorrow. This steel is used for building buildings and stadium. But it's gone. It's gone. It'll never come back to India. It's gone for good. Who gained? Who gained? Two individuals led the loot. But the people who gained belonged to two of the largest political parties in India. I'll name them: the Bharatiya Janata Party and the Indian National Congress. The Bharatiya Janata Party was ruling in Karnataka. The Indian National Congress was ruling in Andhra Pradesh. Gali Janardhan Reddy was a minister in B.S. Yediyurappa's government. And Y.S. Jagan Mohan Reddy was the son of the former Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, the late Y.S. Rajshekar Reddy. Now, all this was known. And after the loot happened, they were put behind bars. Gali Janardhan Reddy spent 3 years in jail. Jagan Reddy spent 1.5 years in jail. But by that time, the resources had been looted. So again, we have an example of resources that belong to the people of this country, which are being literally looted with impunity because it's being done in full collusion between those who are in positions of power and authority. The unholy nexus between business, politics, and crime. Example number 4, this is subject of my book, Gas Wars. It's about the two richest brothers in India. Now, why did they fight? Why were they fighting? Why did the first generation entrepreneur, Dhirubhai Ambani, he built an empire from scratch. He started his life as an attendant in a petrol pump in Aden. And then he became India's richest man. He built a huge business empire. And his two sons fought with each other and partitioned his empire. Why did they fight? They fought not because Tina and Neeta didn't get along with each other. Of course, Tina and Neeta didn't get along with each other. But that was only a very small part of the story. What I've argued in this book, and I'm not unique, there are many people who've argued, that the real reason why these two brothers fell out with each other was because they both wanted to control a natural resource that belonged to the people of the country. The natural gas, which is in the Krishna-Godavari basin in the Bay of Bengal. Anil Ambani wanted to set up, not very far from here, in Dadri, Asia's biggest gas-based power plant, India's biggest gas-based power plant, which would supply electricity to the national capital region. He wanted that gas to be transported over 2,000 kilometers from the eastern coast all the way to a point not very far from the national capital. But he was not able to do that. His own brother, who had promised the gas at a particular price to a public sector body like the National Thermal Power Corporation, they reneged on that contract. They went to court. They never ended up building that power plant, and the two brothers fought. But then the gas that was supposed to come from the Krishna-Godavari gas fields never materialized. And along the way, you'd built up power plants, fertilizer plants, huge amounts of money, tens of thousands of crores of money were invested in capital equipment, which is today lying idle. This is a criminal waste of resources in a developing country, in a poor country such as ours, where 1 out of 4 persons is still poor, where 1 out of 4 persons in this country does not have access to quality health care, to quality education, to nutrition, where 1 out of 3 children are undernourished. Yes, this is the India we live in. This is indeed, yes, it's the world's biggest democracy. It's the world's second most populous nation state. This is the country which has given 1 out of 3 computer software engineers on this planet. But yes, 1 out of 3 persons in this planet who's poor, who's hungry, who's illiterate is also Indian. That is the reality of India. These are not statistics I've cooked up out of my head. You study the documents which have been put out by the different wings of the United Nations, the World Bank, and you'll find all this data is there in the public domain. So what happened to all this gas? They wanted an increase in the price of gas. There was an empowered committee that was set up. That empowered committee was headed by Shri Pranab Mukherjee, who is currently our president. It was recommended that the price of gas be increased from $2.34 per unit to $4.20 a unit. Now, one of your speakers here, Mr. Manishankar Iyer, who was also a former petroleum minister, and he's quoted in my book, he says, Bharatvarsh mein ye jo number hai na, 420. Everybody in India understands what 420 means. मैंने नहीं कहा जी. ये सरकार में जो भूतपूर्व प्राकृतिक पेट्रोलियम और प्राकृतिक गैस का मंत्री जी ने खुद कहा अपने सरकार के बारे में. Then what happened? You had a committee that was set up. Then you wanted the price of gas to go up from 4.20 to 8.40. There was a cabinet committee on economic affairs that was set up. It was divided down the middle. There were 9 members of that cabinet committee. And Jayapal Reddy, who had been made to leave that position, he said, no, you must not increase the price of gas. Srikant Jena, who was the fertilizer minister, he said, no, you should not increase the price of gas. Jyotiraditya Scindia, who was the Minister of State for Power, he said, no, you shouldn't increase the price of gas. Jairam Ramesh, the Minister of Rural Development, he said, no, you should not. But there were 4 people who said, no, you must. Veerappa Moily, the Petroleum Minister, he said, no, this is the way you give incentive to people to produce. They're in a highly risky business of exploring oil. With him was Mr. Kapil Sibal, Mr. Anand Sharma, Shri Salman Khurshid Janab. So it was 4-4. There was one person in the middle. He was quiet right throughout the proceedings. He was, of course, the former Prime Minister of India. And then they decided, yes, we must increase the price of gas. But they could not increase the price of gas. Why? Because elections were around the corner. And the Election Commission of India intervened and said, no, you cannot increase the price of gas because elections are going to take place. Let the new government decide. This is exactly what happened. After this book came out, I was honored and privileged. I got 4 legal notices. One of the legal notices suggested that I pay 100 crores in 10 days. My wife said, you don't even have 1 crore, so are we going to be now out on the streets? I said, don't worry, don't worry. This is the way to scare people. I said, have they pointed out a factual error? I said, no, they haven't pointed out a factual error in what I've written. They don't like my views. Okay, you don't like my views. Maybe you don't like my views. Maybe VC Saab doesn't like my views. It's all right. But there is something called Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution of India. There's something called freedom of expression. It's supposed to be a fundamental right. क्या भारतवर्ष का संविधान में क्या लिखित है कि नहीं कि हर नागरिक का एक मौलिक अधिकार है? अभिव्यक्ति का स्वतंत्रता हर नागरिक का एक मौलिक अधिकार है. ठीक है, 19(2) ये भी कहा कि there should be some reasonable restrictions. कोई युक्तिगत प्रतिबंधन लगा सकते हैं, मगर who decides what is reasonable? Who decides what speech is defamatory, libelous, will disrupt public order, will spread hatred in society, hurt religious sentiments? Who decides? Is it your local cop? Is it your mafia don? Is it your father? Is it your teacher? Or is it the Chief Justice of India? I leave this question unanswered because this question has become a very, very important. We all have to engage with this. And it's not a problem of India alone. Across the world, we are seeing this debate going on as what is the right to free expression? I mean, what does this, how fundamental is this as a right? So, the lawyers acting on behalf of Shri Mukesh Ambani and Shri Anil Ambani said, I have defamed them. I said, please tell me how. He said, you've described him as an oligarch. I said, yes, sure, I've described him as an oligarch. Take me to court. It's been 2 years, they haven't taken me to court. They are saying, you have suggested that the Ambanis put pressure on the government to change the portfolios of ministers. So I said, if anybody should be feeling defamed, it should be Dr. Manmohan Singh, no? He's the Prime Minister. He decides which person is going to hold which ministerial portfolio. Then he said, you're an interested party. I said, yes, I'm an interested party. But I said, I've given you a view. I've given you a version. I've given you a version in detail. There is a legal term for it. It's called SLAPP. SLAPP, Strategic Litigation Against Public Participation. लोगों का मुंह बंद करने के लिए उनको डरा दो पहले. आप 10 साल के बाद आपको ये अदालत कहेंगे कि हाँ सचमुच किसी का मानहानि आपने किया कि नहीं. But till you can establish in a court of law a case of criminal defamation or libel, scare them, intimidate them, harass them. That's what happens. Let me move on, and in the last few minutes, I don't want to take too much of your time. I believe it's time for the namaz break. So I'll just conclude I've given you 4 examples. I've talked about telecom spectrum, I've talked about coal, I've talked about iron ore, I've talked about natural gas. All of these pertain to the 10 years of the United Progressive Alliance government. But let me come to the present government and tell you why I think they're no different in certain respects. And this concerns the land ordinance. भूमि अधिग्रहण, इस मुद्दे के ऊपर जरा आप नजर रखिए. Who does this land belong to? The land which gives you food to eat. Who does it belong to? To the farmer? To the people? Land is a scarce commodity in India. India has roughly 17% of the world's population. We have a country of 1.25 billion people in a planet of 7 billion people, thereabouts. But we have only 2.5% of the land area. सिर्फ 2.5% ज़मीन भारतवर्ष में है. So that's why there are a lot